Well, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us today for today's webinar, Get More Done, How Agents Can Optimize Operations with Virtual Assistants. This is brought to you by Agent for the Future, an industry-wide resource by Liberty Mutual that addresses trending issues and topics impacting the independent agency channel and aimed at helping you achieve success now and into the future. I'm Manny Barbosa. I'll be the host and moderator of today's session. And I'm also an advisor on our Agent for the Future team. And our goal as advisors is to provide agents like you insights into different solutions that can help you adapt to change, solve business challenges, and drive growth for your entire agency. Now, there's no question the last few years in our industry have been pretty challenging, from the pandemic to the hard market. And for some agents, they're working more than ever. And in my years working with agents, a common refrain I hear is that time is a luxury you don't have. Thankfully, there are many solutions out there that can help you get more time back in your day and allow you to focus on growth. It could be hiring local talent, working with carrier service centers, using automation tools, or even AI. These are all great solutions to consider. But today, we're here to talk about virtual assistants, another solution that can help agents get more time back to focus on revenue generating activities. You'll hear perspectives and examples from our guest panelists who are very familiar with the world of virtual assistants. And with that, let's meet our panelists. Today, I'm joined by Danielle Smink, President, Western Region of Keystone Insurance Group and founder and CEO of Canyonlands Insurance in Arizona. Danielle, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Great. Charles McDade. Charles is the founder and owner of McDade Insurance in Texas. Charles, happy you could be a part of the conversation today.
Happy for the invite. Thank you, Manny.
You bet. And we also have Mark Blogg. Mark is the Director of Client Success with CoverDesk, one of several businesses that offer virtual assistant solutions. Mark, very excited to have your perspective today as well.
Thank you, Manny.
Awesome. Well, again, as a reminder for everybody, our webinar, we're going to be having some questions, and you're welcome to share or ask some of your own questions as well. If you have questions, please use the Q&A feature. You'll see that the chat is actually unavailable. So any questions you have, please put them in the Q&A feature. And also, there will be a recording of this webinar sent to everyone afterward. But with that said, let's go ahead and jump into some of the questions. And Danielle, I wanted to start with you. It's a little bit of scene setting. Tell us a little bit, and this is thinking back a few years, because I know you've worked with VAs for a number of years now, but if you rewind the clock a little bit, tell us a little bit about the circumstances at your agency that led you to consider a virtual assistant.
Yeah, so in 2017, bought a book of business. And there was a couple of factors when we were looking at this book of business that we really felt like we needed some help in some areas that our team, we could streamline it, create some efficiencies. And not just that, is that we bought a book of business that was Spanish speaking, a portion of the book of business. And our team was not, all fluent being Spanish speaking. So we felt like that could also create a translator moment for us with our clients too, where we could have them help us write out emails, make sure that they make sense, and be able to do that. So ours was really about starting off trying to figure out how efficient we could be with this book of business. And mind you, this book of business was also it was completely paper. It was all paper. So we also had to go paperless too. So our goal was to get up to speed, become paperless in this agency very quickly, be able to streamline some of the processes we had, especially around mortgagee changes. So there was a lot of refis during that time period. And this was a book of business that was built after the real estate and mortgage industry. So it was primarily monoline home. So we knew that that was going to be a piece of the business that we needed to make sure we can make it as efficient as possible.
Makes sense. Charles, how about you? Tell us a little bit about kind of the circumstances for you you said, hey, I think virtual assistant might be an option for me.
Absolutely. And in my situation, I was a scratch agent. I worked for Liberty Mutual for a good couple of years and then made the transition into owning my own agency and starting it from scratch. I promised myself that I wouldn't do the thing that I did before, which is sell myself into oblivion, where I'm taking calls at all crazy different hours. I'm working an absolute ton. So what really was the pushing over edge is realizing that and it was a conversation that Carrie Wallace had. I was listening to her speak, and she said, as much as you can as a business owner, you need to focus on moving that task where it's best set. So she always talks about moving that $100 task to yourself as an agency owner, and then moving those 10, 15, $5 tasks on down. Because if you, the agency owner, are focusing on that, then you can't push your agency to that next level. Wearing as many hats as you are, it gets really difficult. And talking through what Danielle said with mortgagee changes during 2020 and when I started, that was also a major problem because you're taking the phone call and staying on the line with that individual the entire time, only to then fax that over. So unless you really wanted to take time to move yourself as the CEO down to that $10 a task for 30 hours of your week and expanding your time, I realized quickly I was failing in that regard. So we had to make a shift.
Yeah, delegating some work out there. Yeah. And Mark, from your perspective, obviously working with agents who have VAs and working with VAs themselves, there's a lot that VAs could do. What are, from your experience in aggregate, what are some of the more common tasks that you see virtual assistants addressing most?
Sure, Manny. One of the biggest ones that we see are remarketing renewals. Primarily, we're seeing a lot of personal lines, especially with rates going up. When you start looking at some of your coastal states, and really it's expanded kind of across the country anymore. But remarketing is a huge labor expense for agencies. When you start looking at how much, if you job cost, what it costs to remarket a policy. And you start looking at those labor costs and the effect on revenue, and then just the time that it takes, right? Does your staff have the time to be able to work all these remarkets when you're having to touch all these policies while the phone's ringing, while emails are coming in? Some other tasks that we see in late pays cancellations, following up on late pays cancellations, downloads, endorsements. There's a number of different tasks that we see VAs doing inside VAs doing inside agencies' offices. The other thing is also some of the phone work. Charles brought up mortgagee changes. We've got a lot of VAs on the phone, whether it's talking to lenders, talking to carriers, about payments or underwriting exceptions or just different things that have to happen, or being a receptionist. The idea obviously is to free up licensed folks' time in the U.S. to focus on those revenue generating activities and client relationships. So.
Yeah, sure. Charles, how about at your agency in particular? That there's a lot they can do. What are some specific tasks at your agency?
I really took the time to break down what exactly each particular person in my agency is doing, right? Taking time looking at the processes and procedures of things. If you have an amazing salesperson or a amazing customer service person, and they're spending time on data entry or getting emails together or getting lists together, well, did you pay that person so they would actively, the salesperson, be the best Excel person possibly available? So we really had to deep dive that into, all right, what is it for each particular job title, right? And a lot of people lose sight of what definitions are. It's like, hey, if someone's a producer, their job is to produce, not type quickly, right? So we tried to make it as easy as possible to either leverage automation where we can, and where things are too difficult to still be automated full out. Well, hey, we have a VA that's able to help us and kind of extend the gap until, hopefully I can automate some of those things. But to be specific on like items, questions, thoughts, all that good stuff. So inputting things in our CRM, making sure that those things are up to date. There are times that our salespeople are fantastic at closing the business, just not finalizing the business, right? And if you want your salesperson to produce more, give them more time back. Right. So we did a lot to make sure that the consistency of our process was good data in equals good data out. So we focus specifically on, hey, what are those items that if we could make consistent for our salespeople that could give them time back. So again, verifying CRM information, verifying mortgagee information, sending out emails to verify mortgagee information, and now that has transitioned to an automated task instead of our VA team having to do that. So it's a constant scale of evaluating and reevaluating what can be done and what can be automated and still keep that human interaction, that human touch, if you will.
Yeah, yeah. Sounds like, is that something, just to kind of add on to that, is that something that like a process or a review that you do regularly, once in a while, just to kind of check in and make sure that we're all still in alignment? Or how's that change at the agency?
I love to give the example of definitions and thoughts as marriage, right? The first time my wife told me, hey, clean the kitchen, right? I want you to know I did not hit her bar. Like I was incredibly off, right? So it's that point where you realize that even in your business, when you're asking your employees, your new hires, your VAs to do things, well, all right, hey, I need you to send this email. And then you get unhappy that the email wasn't sent to your specification. Well, just like with the cleaning the dishes, I didn't have a specification before I was given the task. So that is the point where you realize, oh, I've gotten so used to what it means to me culturally in my family with my background, what certain tasks look like for this agency. Now, the question is, as an agent, have you taken the time to actually write down what that looks like, what that acceptable level is? Because if you don't, it's that conversation of if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So it is a consistent rework, replan of let's make this as simple and as easy as possible so they can just fill in information and follow it. Because if I don't, I realize that I would fail quickly. Like I got the help that I wanted. I just didn't know where to tell that help to assist me. And they're not mind readers. They're fantastic people, but they can't. And I hope I'm a fantastic husband, but still not a mind reader. So I had to learn through understanding what her definitions were, understanding what the culture of each agency is on what exactly that process looks like. And that changes as the agency grows. I'm sure Donnell has had so many times where she started with a specific size agency, grew it to a particular size, and realized that there had to be a shift. And it's very similar here, but we're just 5 years into that scratch agency convo. So a lot's changing very fast for us. Yeah. So processes are key.
Yeah, thank you for that. And Danielle, speaking of, wanted to kind of toss that your way as well, because, there's a lot they could do for, and you've worked with them for a number of years. What are some tasks that you feel like are the ones that kind of rise to the top that you think these are the ones I really want them to focus on?
Yeah, I think it depends on why you're hiring them, just like as you do with any of your team members. And that's a big thing to think about. They are an extension of your team. They are your team. And so the more you can integrate them into the team, the better they will do. And so for us, some of the unique ways that we've been able to use virtual assistants throughout our different agencies and within my agency as well, is that we've utilized them, especially in the closing process. Like Charles was saying, like producers are awesome at producers that, work, but they're not good at the paperwork. And so what we did was like, how do you break that down? And then how do you make sure that they do the things that are good for retention? Just doing like setting up the retention campaigns that go out, the automations for the emails to make sure the clients are being communicated, a couple of number of times during the year is super helpful. For commercial lines, we have them doing the grabbing of the policies, making sure that, the automations are there for, even just birthdays. Like, there's still a relationship that they can help you build through having those processes done and making sure that they are completed and done. One of the biggest things we have is that we take that process, we connect it within the management system to make sure there are checklists, so that every single time they do that task, that expectation is set for them every single time on it. And then we do what's called C2Cs, and that's collaboration to creation. And on Tuesdays, we talk with our whole team, including virtual assistants, on people, processes, and partners. And so every week we're bringing up what processes are breaking, which ones are unclear to the team, making sure that if we need to tweak it, we can do it right then and there, and it doesn't sit for 5 months, and you just never change it. And then we do Thursdays, we do cells. And I think it's really important for the virtual assistants to see how what they do is impacting the rest of the team and how they're winning with us too.
Yeah, it's a great way to get folks consistently
Mhm.
on the same page by having those kind of regular check-ins about what was it, people, processes, and what was the last P?
Partners.
Partners. There we
So that
go.
could be like our carriers, it could be, our vendors, it could be our referral partners that we have.
Sure. Yeah. That's great to hear. I know one of the reasons we've said this a few times now is getting some time back in our day and allowing folks to kind of focus on what skills they're best at. Mark, from your perspective, again, you've got a lot of good aggregate data there. Anything you can share as far as like any average, whether it's time savings or increased revenue that agents see with the help of virtual assistants in their agencies?
Yeah, in terms of time savings or revenue, obviously it depends on the types of tasks that the VAs are doing, or how agencies are integrating them into the agency. What we see typically, though, in terms of a cost savings, if you look at our VAs versus maybe hiring somebody in the US to do some of this work, is anywhere from 30 to 50%. Some of that's going to depend on geographically where you are within the United States. But for me, the time savings is probably the bigger piece. And if you look at agencies and agencies we talk to, you don't see people sitting around with nothing to do typically. The phones are constantly ringing. You got emails coming in. People are stressed out because, again, you're having to touch these clients so often now, where years ago you could let a renewal kind of ride for a few years. That's just not happening. So some of it's trying to get some work-life balance back to your U.S. employees to just lighten that load and free up their time. You got people sitting in your offices, they don't want the phone to ring anymore. They don't want another email to come in because they've got enough to do. And so, I think that's probably where, a big value is being able to free up that time. But, again, with the time saving, the cost savings, obviously that's going to lead to additional revenue that the agency is going to generate. I also think that VAs are able to help agencies get out in front of their clients faster. Again, if you think about remarkets, even new business, making sure that we're getting back to those clients before they're going to call another agency. So we've seen agents that have had, anywhere from 3 to 5% increase in retention on their books of business, just being able to get out in front of their customers. So I think there's a lot of different ways that agencies can find ways to save time, again, to go back to building those relationships with their insureds.
Sure. Yeah, definitely something I've heard over the years working with agents is, certainly a desire to want to work and be closer to the client, but just not having the time to do it when you're focused on so many other things, so many hats being worn in the agencies. So yeah, appreciate that. Charles, I wanted to just pivot a little bit to you because you touched on this a little while ago, but it's about your experience working with VAs. And when you and I talked a while back, you mentioned that maybe the start of that relationship wasn't the smoothest with the virtual assistant. And I think the word that I think came to mind a lot was process. And again, you touched on this a little while ago, but can you elaborate a little more on that? What was a little challenging and kind of how you got through it?
Yeah, absolutely. The key there is when you don't realize when you have so much experience in insurance, when you ask for a simple task or what you think is a simple task to be done, it actually requires a lot more items that are very nuanced to your understanding. Whether it ends up being, oh, well, you updated the lost payee, but did you fax it? Did you not fax it? So again, to Danielle's point, those checklists of, oh, wait, I really need to outline what exactly a successful interaction for mortgagee updates looks like, right? Because when I first brought in my VA, I had that look in the mirror portion where I'm beating myself up because I'm like, well, I wasted money. I don't know what I'm doing with this situation. I thought I had a good idea of the items that I wanted them to do. And what I realized was that I had a wish list. Like I had like one of those, whenever you're in high school and you're trying to write down your Prince Charming, I had a whole list of what exactly I wanted someone to do in my agency, but no idea of what that looked like successfully being done. And we had to go back to the drawing board about a month in to us trying to force a relationship that wasn't quite there yet. Like, no, they're trained. They can do the tasks. But if you're not explicitly explaining what each next step, what check mark needs to be done, you're going to find yourself falling backwards. So I'm an old football player. I played D1, had fun, got concussions. We'll pass on that. But it's very similar to a lot of us agency owners, a lot of us owners, managers. We're used to being players on the field. We're used to being coaches on the field to where we can kind of tap our quarterback or our managers, our sales team immediately to help them kind of fix a couple of things. Imagine now, whether it's remote employees or virtual assistants, that now you're in the box. So it takes a little bit of a delayed amount of time for your ideas, your thoughts, your feelings to get relayed to that person. Not because of anything else except for its separate locations. So if you're not very, very specific in your communication by email, by requirements, by procedures, don't be surprised when things aren't done to your specifications if they didn't have your specifications handy to begin with. And I really needed to take ownership of my failure there and reinvent the wheel. By that I mean write the wheel down to begin with. And once I did that, we were in a much better place. So I hope that helps illuminate a little bit more on how absolutely required those processes and procedures must be, because otherwise you're asking them to do things and they may do them, but just not to whatever your standard might be.
Yeah. Yeah. I like hearing that because it's funny. Process, as important as it is, tends to get forgotten about a lot. And it makes sense. We get busy in our day-to-day work, but it's such a critical piece, especially bringing on whether it's a virtual assistant or a local employee. How do we do things? What is the way we do it? So appreciate kind of hearing about your like evolution from doing it yourself to now having to like establish that on paper, so to speak, and making sure everyone was understanding of what that is. Danielle, I wanted to ask a little bit because again, you've worked with VAs now for a number of years in different ways. From your perspective, could you share maybe what were some of the most important learnings to really help ensure that a virtual assistant can smoothly transition and be an addition to the team? What are some things to think about to really make them feel part of the team?
Well, definitely, if you have an onboarding process when you bring in a new employee, they are a new employee. Match that. Let them know that you're cultivating a culture of that they have a voice too. If they see things that are not working the way it should be, that they can speak up too. So that they, you don't want to have it where they can't. That's probably something I learned, is that the more we included them in the meetings, the better we did as a team, because then both sides aren't frustrated with each other and no one's speaking up, or one side speaking up too much and then they feel like they're pitted against each other. So, be inclusive of the culture, including everything. We have in our team, we have We Love You Wednesdays. And so those extend to our virtual assistants as well. So like we've done a paint and sip type of thing, like happy hour, where we actually sent the canvases to our virtual assistants. And then we had a camera in our training room for the rest of the team. And so we all had cameras, so we could watch our virtual assistants in other countries, and they were painting with us. And they were a lot better than we were, actually. They were a lot more artistic. But it was something fun and different for them to do. And so they need that too. They need to feel like they're a part of the team. And so you got to just be a little bit more creative if they're in a different country. So it really helped us prepare us for COVID, because we already had that going on. So I felt like we already had an advantage of how you manage a team virtually going into that. And so we pivoted pretty quickly on that. We had already done activities where we were inclusive of others that were not in the office with us.
Sure. You also mentioned, I think it was Grubhub. That was a good, was a bit of a hit. That works well.
There's some form of Grubhub everywhere. You can get food delivered everywhere. So we have like a data sheet of all of our team members, including virtual assistants, of what are the things that you love, including your favorite restaurants. And so we were able to do that. So sometimes we'll have a meeting where we're all, eating our favorite foods, no matter where we're at. And so that makes them feel very, very special.
Yeah, it's a great idea. And you're right. There's something everywhere. So easy way to kind of just really make them feel, even though they're remote, that they're there and part of the team. I wanted to pivot again and talk a little bit about some considerations, questions that I know are top of mind for some agents about virtual assistants. And I've heard a few. And Mark, I'm going to toss this one to you. One of them really is around the idea of E&O and data security. And given that most VAs, virtual assistants, are in a different country. So can you talk to us a little bit about that more? What are you seeing and what should agents know?
Yeah, so I'll start with the E&O first. So, typically, while we carry E&O, we're going to carry cyber. Typically the E&O is going to lie with the agency that's providing the work to the VA, right? So as a virtual assistant company, we are not providing that work. We are not QAing that work. And that is up to the agency to make sure that they are looking over that work just like they would anyone else in their office. So we are not a risk transfer vehicle. Right. So we're not picking that up. That stays with the agency. For those agents that would consider hiring a VA, there are riders that you can add to your E&O policy that will provide coverage for that. You would just want to talk to your E&O provider about that. And then with security, that's really the big one. When you've got your data sitting out there in another country, some things to consider is going to be what country are your VAs located in. There are certain countries that you might not consider doing business in. And then, just making sure that you're running through a VPN, that these things are encrypted. I mean, again, when you look at client data, we've got social security numbers, dates of birth. There's a lot of information that can be used to, do something fraudulent, open credit cards, whatever you wanted to do. So again, for us anyway, we are an office-based company primarily, and we prefer that just because if you look at our production floor, there are no cell phones on our production floor. There is no paper on our production floor. Our virtual assistants have lockers. They can access their stuff when they're off the floor. We disable USB, so nobody can plug in a thumb drive to download any data. They're not able to access their private email or the personal email. Another consideration is also whose equipment are they working on? So whether we have a VA working in the office, and we do have some working remotely, we have the ability to shut a VA down at any moment if need be, because they're working on our equipment as opposed to working on a computer that belongs to them. I think those are real considerations that have to be made, because recourse, with us being a U.S. company and a Philippines company, if something were to happen, obviously there's some recourse there that an agency would have. but there are agencies that are hiring direct, and there's some risk that goes along with that as well. Who do you go to? Are you going to call the country and say, hey, I think my data has been compromised? Right? Nobody's going to get back with you. So I think agencies need to make sure before they go hiring direct, that they really have, especially hiring direct versus hiring through a company that already has these things in place, that they really do their homework and evaluate, is this something that they really want to manage and take on, and make sure that they're working with an IT company that is going to at least provide them with some guidance to make sure that they're set up correctly to protect their clients' data. To me, that, again, it's probably the most important thing that you have, and whether it's in the Philippines or some of the other countries or the US, I mean, obviously you've got to protect that data anywhere, but especially working remotely is a big deal.
Sure. Yeah, good. Appreciate that perspective. Another question we hear a lot about virtual assistants is the fact that they are located in their own home country. That usually means they're on a different time zone, not always, but sometimes. How does that impact agencies as far as their ability to work with or virtual assistants, or does it? So Mark, back to you on that one.
Yeah, I don't think it really does. I mean, again, if you look at our operations, we are located in the Philippines. I'm here now in the Philippines. It's 2:31 a.m. on Thursday. And we've got 1,000 people sitting in our buildings at our 3 locations here. And so, really with our folks, because a lot of them have already worked night shift, this is kind of what they're used to. Again, you would not know. I mean, I don't know where Charles's VAs are, and I know Danielle, I think, probably had some over here before. You wouldn't know that anybody's working in the middle of the night, but really with the ability to use Zoom, Teams, or the other channels that we have to communicate, it's really not creating any issues in terms of being able to work remotely with them in the time zone. So
great. All right. Well, good to hear that. Charles, how about for you? How's the time zone impact you, or does it, or the fact that they are in another country? Does that have an impact?
So the biggest thing I can say is whether you have individuals wanting to work remotely, right? Time zone's just a piece of that, right? I'll have people that are located on the East Coast. They'll have to end up dealing with some of those changes, those differences, whether it's 3 hours earlier or 12 hours earlier. As long as your people want to assist and do the work, you don't have a problem, right? It's when they're not showing up to work when they're supposed to be that things start being an actual issue. My VA is located in the Philippines. Love him to absolute death, Mondi, and he has consistently, he's consistently been consistent, right? There's really no other way to say about it. Showing up, working late, it's a part of his style, what he wants to do to try to make as much money as he can for his family. So it has been not a consideration. Just like if I had a really trustworthy American employee, if they know how to time block and take care of their business, well, then same conversation applies regardless of if they're in a different country or not.
Yeah, good perspective. Thanks for that. And one other thing, and this actually goes into one of the questions we saw through the Q&A. So again, if you do have questions, Q&A for our viewers is the place to go to drop anything in. But Danielle, I'm going to ask you about this one here. We hear a little bit about VAs coming onto the agency, team member, but are they replacing my job? That sometimes is a concern. How did you address this with your own team, and basically how do you get the team's buy-in to start working with the virtual assistant?
I think before you actually make a hire for a virtual assistant, ask your team what things, if they could take off their plate, they feel like on an everyday basis are keeping them from being their most productive self for themselves and the agency, and then start that list and then say, I want you to be as successful as possible, and I want to take those off your plate. And then it's about them, and then they have ownership in seeing that the virtual assistant is also successful, because then If they're not, those are going back on their plate. So I just want to make sure I have the buy-in of them first to do it. And sometimes like we've had really good buy-in with the team, and sometimes we haven't. And then we got to say, okay, was it maybe the tasks that we gave them that's not really giving them the relief that they need. And then also it's important that they need to know is that if they're more successful, they're going to make more money too. So it's going to go to their pocketbook. They're going to make more, not less. And I think there's just a misconception of that when you first start talking about other people doing, parts of their job as well. And so just definitely get the buy-in in the beginning of it. And some of the skill sets of our team are not even suited to some of the things we're handing them. Like one of the big things is data. We talk a lot about wanting to know our data and how to, actually measure our data. Well, I really wanted to take the reporting that we were doing and create these dashboards with Power BI. And that is not a skill set that most of our team has, unless you've got a really, really big team. And I wanted it to be run on an everyday basis, like kind of thing. So I could say every day, like, here's the pulse of the agency, here's where we're at with all of our lead sources in a visualized manner that was different than what the management system was giving us. And so we were able to take a virtual assistant company and go and bring in outside of the industry somebody to come in and do that with us. So then it wasn't another thing that we were adding to the plate of our team, especially in a hard market. Like we were talking about the remarkets, their job has not gotten easier, it's gotten harder. So like, that's not a good time to say, I think I'd like you to become a data specialist at this time. It doesn't work. It adds more stress to them.
Sure. Yeah, and so I think kind of the big thing that I hear when you were just talking is really, it sounds like we need to be upfront with our team about, hey, what is it that's a challenge roadblock for you? What can we take off your plate? And if they're part of that conversation, then that is going to be the core of what makes this either a smooth process or not. Is, if they come in kind of blindsided by it all, I could certainly see that being a concern to them. So I like the way you put that, just getting their insight on, hey, what could you take off your plate that would allow you to do more with what you're already good at. So appreciate that there. I did want to turn to the Q&A. We do have a couple of questions in here, and there's one in here just, Mark, I'm going to actually toss this one to you. Question really coming in about virtual assistants and licensing. Are they licensed? Do they have to be? Are they like, tell us a little bit about the world of licensing and non-licensing with virtual assistants.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Well, obviously, if you're working outside of the United States or Puerto Rico, they are not going to be licensed. So they're doing unlicensed activities. Questions we get around what requires a license, what doesn't require a license, right? That's big. A lot of the work that we do inside of an agency does not require a license to do that work. Whether that be quoting or managing the data, managing the management system or following up for signatures. There's just a lot of different things that we're doing on a daily basis. You don't have to be licensed to do. We can always help and work with agencies to help identify areas that they may need some assistance that would not require a license. So I don't see that being a roadblock. And I think Charles and Danielle would probably tell you the same thing, that a very small part of what we do requires that license.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah. Great. Well, with that said, I'm just looking at the time here, and I know we're coming to the end of our time together here shortly. So I just want to say I really appreciate all the conversation today. And with just a few minutes left, I wanted to share a few things with you, our viewers, before we conclude. To begin with, just to be sure, we'll be sending a recording of this webinar to everyone who's registered, so you can expect that after the session. We'll make sure to get that out to you. But there's a couple of things, a couple additional things we wanted to highlight as well. First of all, as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, I'm an advisor on our Agent for the Future team. You can find out a little more about us at agentforthefuture.com/advisors. And just learn a little bit about how we can help you navigate. There's a lot of options out there about how to manage your business, tech, industry challenge, business optimization, you name it. We can help you navigate that. So take a look at the advisors and see about what we can do to help you there. Also, be sure to check out agentforthefuture.com. That's kind of our parent site, our core site there. You'll find our latest original research reports there. There are articles from other agents like you and experts in the industry on a variety of different topics that are popular, trending, impacting the industry. And you also find our past webinars on there as well. And with that said, I just want to thank you, our panelists, Danielle, Charles, and Mark, for taking the time out of your day to share your insights and your experience with us today. And I want to thank all of you, our viewers tuning in, for contributing to the conversation and for being here as well. And with that, just want to say thanks again for all of your time and have a great rest of your day. Thank you.